Namaste Dosto! Welcome to Desified Dish! My name is Reiko. So, today we're going to be making paratha. But this is paratha like you've never had before. You see, one day I was craving butter sauteed mushrooms. It's a common ingredient that you get in a cafe breakfast here in Melbourne. And the thought occurred to me, wouldn't that be an amazing thing to stick inside a paratha? So that's what we're going to do. The main ingredient here, of course, is going to be, you guessed it, mushrooms. So, chalo, let's cue the music and make some paratha. So we're going to start by making the dough, so I'm going to get out my trusty repurposed bread bowl. To this I'm going to add 1.5 cups of atta, or whole wheat flour. This is actually a multigrain flour that has a lot of different grains in it. I really love the texture and the flavour it provides. If you're scaling this recipe up, it's 1/4 cup of flour for each paratha. Now we'll add 1/2 teaspoon of ajwain or carom seeds. 1/2 tablespoon of oil, I'm using canola. Now we'll add water. Don't add too much at once. I'm using hot water here. I think it brings the dough together a bit easier than using cold. Now this step is crucial. Definitely make sure you remove your rings before you put your hands into the dough. Also make sure you've got some extra water on hand so you don't have to try and turn on the tap with a doughed hand. So let's get our hands in there and start mixing it all together. As you can see, it definitely needs some more water, so I'm going to add some extra in. Alright, it's starting to come together now. As a side note, you can use this same recipe to make any kind of filled paratha. So now that our dough is homogeneous, I'm going to start kneading. So as you can see, I'm using mostly the heel of my hand to squeeze the dough and drag it across the bottom of the bowl, and then wrapping it over itself and completing this process again and again until the dough gets nice and soft and pliable. Now I'm going to form it into a ball using my fingers. And that's our dough ready to rest. So let's put our dough to bed and cover it with a damp tea towel and let it rest for 20 minutes. Alright, so while our dough is resting, let's go ahead and start working on the filling and also the raita that's going to go along with it. Cello. So we'll do the filling first. So I've got a cutting board and a knife here and mushrooms. This is 300 grams of button mushrooms. Now I'm going to carefully slice them. By the way, 300 grams equated to about 13 mushrooms. Now I'm going to bunch them up and cut them very finely. It's important for fillings in paratha to always be cut finely so they don't poke through the dough. Also keep in mind though that mushrooms will shrink a lot when you cook them. Now to get our spice on. So I've got 2 chilies here, 1 Thai, 1 long green, and I'm going to, again, chop these finely. If there's one thing that goes amazingly with butter and mushrooms, it's gotta be garlic. So I'm going to break off 4 cloves of garlic for the paratha, but I'm also going to keep one aside for the raita later on. Now onto the same chili plate, the garlic can make friends with it. So I'm going to use my garlic crusher here and crush those 4 cloves of garlic onto it. I know technically this is 2 cloves, but they are massive. And now onto the rosemary. So I've got 4 sprigs here, which using my fingers, I'm just going to remove the leaves by going against the grain. Now I'll bunch up my rosemary leaves and chop it finely. Our last bit of prep for the paratha filling is to grate 1/2 a red onion. So I've got my box grater here and I'm going to, well, you guessed it, grate it. Now for our garlic and rosemary raita. So I'm going to add to a small bowl about 1/2 cup of plain yogurt. To this I'm going to grind that other very large garlic clove. So again, this is probably about 2 normal sized cloves. To this I'll add a generous grinding of black pepper. And a couple of grinds of salt. Now into my mortar and pestle, I'm going to add the last sprig of rosemary leaf. As you expected, the next step is to pestle it good. Now because this isn't dried rosemary, I can't get it into a fine powder or anything like that, but bruising the leaves should help them release their flavour into the yogurt when we add it in a sec. Now introduce the rosemary to the raita. And let's give everyone a real good mix. Once it's smooth and fully mixed, you know that it's ready. And that's our prep work done, so chalo, on to the cooking! My implements of choice for this cooking will be my very, very old wooden spoon and this silicone lifter. But for now, we'll just need the spoon. So now over to the hot plates, I'm going to place down my saute pan and set the heat to medium. Once the pan is hot, I'm going to add half a tablespoon of oil, I'm using canola oil here, and 2 tablespoons of salted butter. We're just wanting to melt the butter, so make sure you move it around so it melts evenly and doesn't burn. In goes our green chili and garlic. Saute this until it gets a little bit of color. You're just looking for a light browning here. Now in goes our grated onion, and we want to cook this for about 4 to 5 minutes or until translucent. And now the star of our paratha, in goes the mushroom. Give everything a good mix and cook for about a minute so it soaks up all the butter and garlic. Now let's sprinkle in the rosemary and mix this in. Almost immediately it filled the kitchen with that beautiful piney smell that rosemary has. Cook for about 30 seconds. Lastly, let's add in our ground spices. 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, 1/2 teaspoon of red chili powder, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Mix these and cook for about 30 seconds. And that's our filling ready, so let's get on to putting those paratha together. Now before you put together the paratha, do make sure that the mixture has cooled down a little first. Now let's get on to rolling. So I'm going to get out my breadboard and let's wake our dough from its slumber. As you can see, the dough is now super soft and ready for rolling. So I'm going to start by rolling it into a log, then dividing the dough into 3 equal pieces, then dividing each of those in half so we end up with 6 dough sections. Now we're going to roll those into a ball. If you're not looking to cook all of these right now, you can put the dough balls in the fridge for a few days. Before we get to rolling, it's a good time right now to set up our tawa so it gets nice and hot by the time we're ready to cook. So I'm going to set this on a medium-high heat. Alright, let's get to rolling. So I'm going to throw down a generous pinch of flour here. Take one of my dough balls and start by pressing it down with the palm of my hand to get it decently flat. Make sure to flip it over so both sides get covered in flour. Alright, now we're ready to roll. So I'm going to take my rolling pin and start to roll it from the outside in. Notice that I'm changing the direction and also flipping over each time. I'm not yet at that ability where I can make the paratha turn as I roll it, so I have to do it this way. One day I hope to get there, but for now, this is working. Since we're going to be folding this over, you want to make sure it's fairly thin. It might not be perfectly round, so I'm not ready for marriage, but it'll definitely work for the paratha, trust me. Okay, so now we're going to add our filling. So I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of the mushroom mixture into the middle. Now using my fingers, I'm going to roughly shape the mixture into a triangle. Don't worry about perfection here because we are going to be using our rolling pin to sort of spread the mixture throughout. It just makes it easier when we're folding over the edges. Alright, now for the origami part. So I'm going to start by folding the left side over, using the mixture as a guide as to where to fold, and then folding the right side over that, and then bringing up the bottom to complete our little triangle. Then I'm going to use my fingers to pinch the edges closed so the mixture doesn't squirt out. And also those edges are going to go super crispy when we fry them in a moment. The mixture is currently lumpy and very uneven, so what I'm then going to do is, using my rolling pin, I'm just going to gently press down the mixture so that it spreads out to the edges of the paratha. This is going to make sure that the mixture is in every nook and cranny of the paratha and it's going to get evenly cooked. And there we are, there's our first one done. So do the same with the rest of the paratha. And like magic, here's the second one. My tawa is now up to temperature, so let's go ahead and cook. So I'm going to bring this one over. Off we go, little paratha. Slap him down with a good little thud. After about a minute or so, it should now have some nice brown spots, so let's flip it over and that looks perfect. Then drizzle some oil on the cooked side, and we're going to flip it over again. Repeat the same with the first side. So again, we're going to put oil on and then flip it again. Once it gets dark brownish spots on both sides, it's ready! So let's go ahead and serve. Alright, we're back and the cooking is done, so I present to you Mushroom Paratha. And it's got a wonderful smell. You get those sort of oily smells from the paratha itself, but I'm also getting those hints of the mushrooms and especially the garlic, because as you saw, it's got so much garlic in it. I bet it's going to taste really good. So let's go ahead and give it a try, shall we? So I'm just going to break off a piece here, and look at that. You can see all the mushroom inside. So I'm just going to dip it in my garlic rosemary raita here. Let's have a try. Oh, that is incredible. All of those things just go together so well. The rosemary with the mushroom, that hit of garlic, the richness added from the butter. And then there's also a decent hint of spice from the chili powder and the green chili that I added in. Oh, it's perfect. This is definitely one breakfast I'm going to be making again. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. And if you want to catch what dish I get up to next time, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching Dosto, and Fir Malenge. I'll catch you in the next one.